lot, and he is an electrical engineer for LG&E, but he also has a really cool side job, which is being a beekeeper. So since we are studying pollinators right now, we thought it would be a wonderful idea to ask him to come share his knowledge and maybe encourage some of you to become beekeepers one day. So, be on your best behavior, please make us proud.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Appreciate, or Miss Walters. Thank you, Miss Walters. Well, good afternoon, everyone. How are you? All right. Is everybody excited to learn about honeybees? Yeah! Awesome. I don't think there's anything I like talking about more than honeybees. They're truly, truly fascinating little insects. How many of you have seen a honeybee before? How many of you have eaten honey? Do you guys like honey? Yeah! Who doesn't like honey, right? You don't like honey? What? All right. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a real quick presentation on honeybees, okay? You guys hold your questions to the very end. I know you're going to have some questions for me, and I love talking about honeybees, so I will answer all of your questions, but I want to show you a few things, and I want to teach you a little bit about honeybees, and then I have some show and tell that I'm going to pass around and show you guys so that you can see some of the equipment and some of the hives that the honeybees use and live in, okay? Does that sound good? Yeah! All right, let's get started. Okay, so a few of the things that we're going to talk about today, and this is isn't that a cute little honeybee right there with her fuzzy little hair? Yeah. So we're going to talk about the different types of bees that are in the hive. We're going to talk about the life cycle of a honeybee, how long she lives, okay? We're going to talk about swarming behavior and what exactly is a swarm. Some of you may have actually seen one in the wild. And then we're going to talk about pollination, which my understanding, Miss Walters says that you guys have been learning about pollination in your class. Is that right? Yeah! All right. We're going to talk about how bees communicate with each other because they don't talk. And they actually live in the dark in their hives, so they have to communicate with each other very effectively. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about what everybody loves, and that's honey. Okay, so these are the 3 types of bees in a honeybee colony. Does anybody know or can guess what this one is? Nope. Yes, she is correct. This is the queen of the colony, and you can tell because she is the largest queen. She is the mother of all the bees that are in the colony. She is the only one of all the bees that lays the eggs and makes new bees. Does anybody know or can guess what A is? Go ahead. It is not a yellow jacket. That's a wasp, but that's a good guess. Can you go ahead? It is a honeybee, but do you know what kind of honeybee it is? One more guess. It kind of is the king. That's actually a really good guess. So that is called a drone. And a drone bee is a male bee, okay? So the queen is the mom, and the drone is the dad, but there are several different drones. And you can tell the drones because they have really, really large eyes. Do you see how much bigger their eyes are than the queen? Okay. And now, who can guess what C is? Yes, exactly. That is excellent. It is a worker bee. And all of the worker bees in a colony are females. And they do all of the work. They do all of the foraging. They gather all of the nectar. They make all of the honey. They take care of the queen. The male bees do not do any work. And this is usually where I hear some funny comments from the ladies. So they are in the colony as the males, and their job is to mate with the queens and make more bees. Okay, so they do consume some honey and some resources, but the female bees, if you've ever seen a bee on a flower or in a tree, that is a female bee. So those are the 3 different types of bees in the colony. So where do bees come from? Well, they come from the queen. And again, you can tell this is the queen because she has a really large abdomen compared to the female worker bees. So these are all female worker bees here, and then you have the queen here. So let's talk about the life cycle of a honeybee, okay? And this is how honeybees reproduce. So inside the comb All honeybees start out as a little bitty tiny little egg. It looks like a grain of rice. And the queen bee, like I said, is the one that lays that egg. So a worker bee, which we all said was the female bees, they take 21 days from the time they're an egg to the time they emerge out of their cell as a worker bee. The male bee, the drone, takes the longest. It takes 24 days for the male bee to emerge out of the cell. And then the queen bee takes the least amount of time. That's right. She only takes 16 days, a little bit over 2 weeks, for her to emerge out of her cell. Okay, so I've got a video here for you that I hope it's going to play. It may or may, I don't think it's going to play for me. Nope, sorry guys, I guess the video's not going to play, but that's okay, I can show you maybe later. So let's talk a little bit about the life cycle of the honeybee. So worker bees do have different jobs. So when they just come out of their cell and they're only 1 or 2 days old, they have the job to clean the cells, okay? Those cells have to get cleaned, and they start with the ones that they were actually born in. They also keep the brood warm, and brood is a word for other young bees that are inside the capped cells that haven't emerged yet. Their job is to keep those warm. When they turn 3 to 5 days old, their job is to feed the older larvae, like we were shown in the previous cell when they were in the middle of their life cycle. When they turn 6 to 11 days old, they have the responsibility to start feeding other bees in the colony. When they're 12 to 17 days old, they start producing wax. And I have some actual beeswax here. It's 100% pure beeswax, and I will pass this around here in a little bit so you guys can all see it. So bees have wax-producing glands where they secrete this out of their abdomen, and that wax is what they use to make the honeycomb. When they're 18 to 21 days old, they are protecting the hive entrance, and they're on guard duty. So can anybody guess maybe what some predators are for honeybees? Nope. There might be some badgers. Yeah. Go ahead. Other honeybees? Yes, that's called robbing. That's actually a good guess. But more like skunks, raccoons, birds. Those are some natural predators for honeybees. So honeybees have to guard their hives from predators. So bees that are 18 to 21 days old, they actually have the task of guarding the entrance. When the bees are 22 days until the end of their life, worker bees only live about 45 days, and that's it. And it's not very long, is it? That's a little bit about a month and a half. And so what they do from the time they're 22 days old to the time they're about 45 days old is they forage. And that is the most dangerous job of a honeybee. They actually leave the hive, and they go to the flowers, and they go to the trees and the buds on the trees, and they collect the nectar, and they collect the pollen, and they bring that back to the hive. It is very dangerous. Yes, it is very dangerous. Look at that. Now, this is taken from my own swarm trap. This was taken right at my house. And so what we have here is a swarm of bees that has landed on one of my swarm traps. There are thousands and thousands of bees right here. And unfortunately, I don't think the video is going to play, but let me see if I could get it. No, it's just not going to work. That's okay. So this is called a swarm. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what swarming is. So this one is not at my house. So has anybody ever seen one of these in the wild? You have seen them. That's awesome. And you typically see these around April, May timeframe. If you ever see a giant ball of bees, tell an adult to call a beekeeper, because one of my jobs is to go and collect and save these bees. And then what I do is I bring them back to my house, back to where I keep all my bees, and I rehome them in my yard. A bee yard is called an apiary. Have you guys ever heard that word? Apiary? Okay. That's called a bee yard, and all of my honeybee hives are in my apiary. So let's talk a little bit about swarming. How bees survive in the nature is they split themselves in two. So eventually a colony gets so full of bees it runs out of room. It'd be like if you guys had 16 or 15 brothers and sisters, you'd run out of space in your house, right? So it's the same thing in a honeybee colony. So what happens is the queen bee along with about half of all the bees in the hive, leaves. She flies out, 10,000 bees fly out with her, and they find a landing spot. Maybe it's in a tree. You've seen crazy pictures. Sometimes it's on a car. Sometimes it's in a house, right? And what they're doing is they're going and looking for a new home. Meanwhile, back at the original house, they raise a new queen bee. And that new queen bee takes over the original duties in the house. And now you have 2 separate bee colonies. Isn't that cool? I mean, that's pretty neat how they survive that way. And then look, you can see right here where they're starting to build some of the honeycomb. That's honeycomb that they're building so that the queen can start to lay new eggs in here and she can make new honeybees. And they also store honey in this honeycomb. So that's made out of 100% beeswax. Hang on just a second. Okay, so here's a couple more pictures of some swarming and a beekeeper that is collecting that swarm. So like I said, the swarm may land in a tree somewhere, and it's this big ball of bees. The beekeeper comes and brings a beehive, okay? And then takes that big ball of bees and puts it inside the beehive and then rehomes them back to where their apiary is. And this looks very similar to what I have here. It's called a Langstroth hive. Okay, so let's talk about foraging and nectar and pollen. So honeybees get pollen. That is their protein. Do you guys know what protein is? Like chicken and meats, right? That's protein. Well, a bee's protein is pollen. Well, do you guys know what nectar is? Nectar is their sugar. And this is what they turn into honey that we all enjoy eating, right? So stores of nectar, they store their nectar in a special stomach called a honey stomach. Bees actually have 2 stomachs. They have a stomach like you and I for eating food and getting nutrition. And then they have a separate stomach where they just store the nectar to be able to carry back to the hive and deposit that nectar into a honeycomb. And so that is called their honey stomach. The pollen, whenever you see a bee buzzing around and she lands on a flower or she lands on a bud on a tree, do you see all these little hairs on the bee? Okay? Those pick up pollen off of the flowers. And that's what this is right here. This is pollen. So you can see, if you look real closely here, you'll see little bits of yellow pollen right here. And so she will fly from flower to flower to flower. That pollen sticks to her hair. And she doesn't intend to do this, but just because she is gathering that pollen and nectar, she is pollinating flowers and she is pollinating trees. So let's talk a little bit about pollination. There are beekeepers that pack their hives up and they put it on giant semi-trucks. And they drive those hives all the way to California. And they put hundreds and hundreds of hives in the almond fields. And those bees go and pollinate the almond trees. And can anybody guess why pollination is so important for things like almond trees? Go ahead. That's a pretty true straight. So he said if we didn't have pollination, we wouldn't be alive right now. We would certainly be in trouble. That's correct. So pollination actually doubles and triples the amount of almonds that a tree produces if it's not pollinated. So almond farmers get lots and lots of more almonds if they have honeybees pollinating their trees. Did you guys know that 1 in every 3 bites of food that you take is a direct result of bees and bumblebees and butterflies pollinating the flowers and the trees? Did you guys know that? Isn't that pretty cool? So the pollen sticks to their tiny little hairs and they transfer that. And it's also stored in little pouches on their hind legs. So do you see this big bee pollen right here? We call that their pollen baskets. And so they don't really have like pockets or anything. So what bees have to do is they take the pollen off the flower and they push it on their back leg and they can fly this little ball of pollen back into the hive. And that, like I said before, that is the protein that bees need, including the young eggs and the young larvae. They are fed pollen and nectar that those foragers are out getting. Isn't that pretty cool? Yeah. All right. So this is in my yard. This is actually a video, but unfortunately our videos aren't working. But you would see thousands and thousands of bees flying here. So this is back in my apiary. I've got 4 beehives next to each other here. And all those bees are zooming in and zooming out, gathering nectar and gathering pollen and bringing it back. Did you guys know that a bee can go 2 to 3 miles away from their hive and find their way back? Isn't that pretty cool? They have an amazing sense of direction. Whereas someone mentioned a yellow jacket. That is a wasp. And they can only go a couple hundred feet from a line of sight of where their home is. A honeybee can go miles away. So it's pretty fascinating. Okay. There we go. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about communication and signals that honeybees do. So a round dance, a honeybee will go inside of a colony and she will do a round dance in this pattern here. And what she is doing is she is telling all of her sisters, hey, I found some food nearby. I think you all should join me and go find this food source and collect nectar and pollen and help me bring it back. So she is recruiting her sisters to go get some food and bring it back. It'd be like if you guys, one of you, found an ice cream stand up the road and you came back in here and said, hey class, there's ice cream right up the road here. I think we should take a quick class trip up there and get some ice cream. That's essentially what they're doing in the hive. And then there's another cool dance that they do that's called the waggle dance. And a worker bee will waggle her abdomen back and forth like this in a figure 8. You guys know what a figure 8 is? Looks like an 8, right? So she will waggle her abdomen back and forth. And she is telling her sisters that she found something interesting miles away. And it may not just be food. Do you guys remember that big swarm of bees? Remember the big ball of bees? They are still homeless. They are trying to find a home. Now, a bee's natural home in nature is usually inside of a tree that is hollow inside. So when a swarm goes out and lands on a tree, that swarm will send out something called scout bees. And those bees are out looking for a hollow tree somewhere. Now, when one of them finds a hollow tree, she flies back to that ball of bees and she says, hey, everyone, I found a new home, okay? And it's over here. Is that not incredible that a bee can waggle its abdomen back and forth and tell that giant ball of thousands of bees within pinpoint accuracy where a new home is 3 miles away? Is that not incredible? I mean, that blows my mind. I think that's incredible. So that is the waggle dance, and that is how they find a new place to locate for their home. Now that is honeycomb. Pretty cool looking, right? So this is honey, this is nectar, and this is honey that the bees have deposited inside of a cell. And then they've capped it over with a layer of wax, right? So when a forager bee goes out and collects nectar, she comes back to the hive and she passes that nectar to another bee. And then another bee passes that to another bee. And then another bee passes it to another one. Each time there are enzymes inside the bee that are being passed along. And that is how bees convert nectar into that delicious honey that we like to eat. So each bee adds enzymes. New honey is dried out. That's why they put this wax capping over it so that they can dry it out and it's capped for storage. Did you guys know that honey never goes bad? Ever. As long as it's sealed in a jar, it will never go bad. They found honey in the Egyptian pyramid tombs from thousands of years ago that's still good. I know. Isn't that incredible? It never goes bad. And here, hey, here's some really fancy words for you guys, okay? It is hygroscopic and hydrophilic, which means that it both gains moisture or loses moisture. It's really incredible. So, those videos might work. We'll try that. Okay, Charlotte, we'll try that here in a minute. So, here's another, listen to this, guys. This is amazing. 1 pound of honey, that's not that much. 1 pound of honey, one little jar of honey, requires 1,152 bees to travel 112,000 miles to visit 45 million flowers for 1 pound of honey. Isn't that crazy? I think that's crazy. And that's how amazing these little creatures are. So here's some of my honey, okay? And my label is called Bees in the Weeds, okay? Thank my wife, she came up with that name. I thought it was pretty clever. So where does the honey come from? Well, I mentioned before, in the early spring, it's going to come from a lot of trees, right? And in our area, we have all sorts of different flowering trees like black locusts and maple trees, right? We have bush honeysuckle. Does everybody know what dandelions are? Those little yellow dandelions in the yard? Bees love those. Bees absolutely love dandelions. They forage on them. And white clover. You guys ever seen clover out in the field? It's got the little white. Yep. They forage on that too. Well, in the end, towards the summertime, they forage on goldenrod. It's like a yellow-looking weed. Have you guys seen that? And aster and buckwheat. So, can anybody guess why the honey is different colors?
Because it's from different plants.
Nailed it. That's exactly right. Good job. High five. Awesome. It's because it's from different trees and different flowers. That is what creates the color of natural bee honey. Which weeds, which flowers, which trees are the bees feeding on and pollinating? That's where that color comes from. Okay. I have a YouTube channel. So, first question, how many followers? I have close to 5,000 subscribers. And maybe I'll have a few more after today, right? Okay, so I was not able to bring any live honeybees here today for very obvious purposes, but I thought if you all want to see me working with live honeybees, you can check out my YouTube channel. I have several hundred videos. My YouTube channel name is Bees in the Weeds. So you can look it up and you can watch me working with different honeybees if you'd like to. I don't have any plaques yet. I'm working on it, okay? Or if any of you ever go up to Oldham County, which is where Miss Walters and myself are from, you can find me at the LaGrange Farmers Market. Do you guys know what a farmers market is? It's honey for sale. You can actually buy the Bees in the Weeds honey if you'd like to, yes. And I also sell beeswax, all sorts of stuff there. But I do sell bees also. Yes, I do sell bees. Yes. And those are called nucleuses. Yes. So other beekeepers will call me and they'll say, Josh, I would like to buy some of your bees. And I will sell them a nucleus of bees that they can take home to their apiary and start their own beehives, right? So if you are ever in LaGrange or your mom and your dad ever want to go to the LaGrange Farmers Market, you could come up and say, hi, Mr. Scott, remember you presented to us, and maybe you might want to get some of my honey. Okay, so I know there's going to be thousands of questions, but we're going to try real quick what Miss Walters said. We're going to try to take it out of presentation mode and see if these videos would work because I think you'd really enjoy it. Let's see if this would play. Oh, it's just not going to play. Sorry, unfortunately. So let's go ahead. They are posted on YouTube. So yes, that's a very good point. If you do want to watch these videos, they are on my YouTube channel, so you can go there and watch them. So, okay, so I know you guys are going to have 1,000 questions for me, which is awesome. I want to pass around a few things, okay? This is the pure beeswax. All right, you guys smell it? It smells very good. I'll go ahead and pass that around so you guys can share it. I'm going to take one over here, okay? And I'm going to talk a little, while you guys are passing those around, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the equipment we use. How are we doing on time, Charlotte? Okay. 15 minutes. Okay, perfect. So this is the beehive. This is what we call a load straw. So this is what bees live inside, okay? This is a honeycomb frame. This is what I was talking about that the queen bee lays her eggs in. There's no bees in here. And this is what the queen puts her eggs in, and this is what the honey goes inside. Now, I will pass these around. Everybody listen. But I want you to be very careful with these and only handle it on the wood, okay? So I'm going to pass. Oh, there it is. Yeah, you can play some of the videos if you wanted. Play.
It's not having access to 1 million industrial grade
Here, play. Go back. How do I go back? How do I go back?
Got that one.
Yeah, let's do. Yeah. Oh, what happened? Play this one.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna play a video of a queen bee laying an egg. Okay, and I'm gonna pass around a few more frames. So here you go. Just be very careful with the comb. Okay. Oh, pass that to the next table. Yep. Okay, so there's the queen. She's walking. She just stuck her abdomen in a cell, and she is laying an egg. And all those worker bees around her are called the retinue. And they are nurse bees, and their job is to take care of the queen and to feed her and to groom her and take care of her. So she just laid the egg, and now she's coming out of the cell. Isn't that neat? All right, go back and let's see if we can find another cool one. How do we scroll down? Okay. Here, let's go ahead and pass this other frame around. Oh, do that one. They're going to love this one. Okay, now we got to fast forward a little bit, but watch this one, guys.
Normally you should not.
Now, here's a swarm, guys, okay? Now, ignore the fact that I don't have my bee suit on, okay? That's not the best example, but I know what I'm doing. It's a calculated risk. I've been doing this for a while. But this is a swarm that I found in my yard, okay?
I'm not even going to try to.
And I am getting ready to rehome them in a new hive, okay? So there are thousands of bees on that branch. Oh yeah, what happened to the audio? Oh, okay. But that's okay. You can turn it up just a little bit. So,
Oh, it's heavy.
but yeah, there's thousands of bees here. And there's a queen in there somewhere, okay? And all these worker bees. And so you're going to see me rehome them here. Watch this. And that's the question I always get. How did you not get stung? I did get stung once or twice. I'm just used to getting stung. Okay?
Okay, let's try to get the lid.
And so there's my disclaimer. Some choose not to lay it on the frames, but all the bees now are going inside of their new home. Isn't that cool?
Bees, come on. Out of the way, out of the way.
All those thousands of bees now have a brand new home.
Really trying not
Isn't that
to
neat?
bees, trying to push them out of the way here. Okay, there we go. So that's good.
Okay, you can stop it. Let's talk a little bit about the personal protection. So this is a bee suit. So this is a special suit. You want to look at it? That's a special suit. It's got a hood on it that bees can't sting through. Well, they kind of can, but it's hard for them to sting through, right? And so, yeah. And so I will put this on when I'm working in the yard if the bees are being extra feisty and I don't feel like getting stung a lot, right? And this protects my face and eyes and my arms from getting stung, okay? It's a special suit. I usually just wear jeans, and yes, the bees can sting through my jeans, but, you know, I don't mind it so much. I really just don't want to get stung on the face, right? And here's some gloves. Those are the gloves if you want to put gloves on. Now, this is something called propolis. And bees will go out to trees, and they will gather sap from the trees, and they will bring it back to the hive. And this is basically how they keep their hive clean and how they keep predators like ants and other things out of their hive. So I'll go ahead and pass around the propolis if you'd like to see the propolis, okay? And just two other items, and then I'll take some questions. Anybody know what this is? What? Yes, it's a smoker, right? You smoke the bees. Now, does anyone know why we smoke our bees? In the very back, go ahead. This young lady. Why?
You can't hear her.
Kind of, yes. Anyone else? Go ahead. It doesn't make them fall asleep. So we smoke the bees for two reasons, okay? Number one, when you put smoke inside of a hive, the bees think their house is on fire. So they no longer care about Mr. or Mrs. Beekeeper who's trying to get inside their hive. They now care about trying to get as much honey as they can and getting ready to abandon ship. Just like if your house was on fire, you would try to get outside as quickly as you could to be safe, right? You try to be safe and get away from the fire. Well, the bees are doing the same thing. Now, there's another reason why we smoke the bees, okay? Whenever bees think that there is an intruder, and I technically am an intruder every time I get in a colony to do an inspection, they send out an alarm, an alert. Just like if a stranger tried to break into your house, it's the same thing. They think I'm trying to break into their house. So they send out an alarm signal called a pheromone. And they tell all their sisters to go sting this guy. This guy's trying to get into our hive. We're going to go sting him. The smoke covers up that alarm pheromone so that they can't detect it. So number one, they think their house is on fire. Number two, they're unable to tell their sisters to go sting this guy. So that is why we smoke our hives. And then this is just called a hive tool. This is what I use to pull frames and to work inside of the beehive. So, thank you. All right, first question. Who has questions for me? Right there in the back. And shout really loud so I can hear you. That is an excellent question. So the question was, when a bee stings you, does she die? And the answer is yes. So a honeybee has a barbed stinger. So when she stings you, it gets stuck in your skin. And when she tries to fly away, it rips her stinger out, which causes her to die. Now, wasps, like yellow jackets and bumblebees, they can sting you multiple times because their stinger is smooth. But a honeybee stinger is like a fish hook. So when it goes inside you, it gets stuck and she can't pull it out, and unfortunately she dies. So when a honeybee is trying to sting you, she's doing it, for life or death. Next question. Yes. Really loud so I can hear you. That's a really good question. So the question is, what do bees do when the queen dies? So a queen can die due to natural causes. There's other reasons why a queen could die, and they raise a new queen. So the worker bees are able to detect if a queen bee is no longer alive or if she's no longer in the colony, like we talked about swarming when I said the queen leaves. The bees that are left behind can immediately tell that the colony is queenless because there is a lack of a pheromone called the queen mandibular pheromone that quickly dissipates. And so what they do is they turn one of those eggs into a new queen. So they will draw that comb extra long because a queen is so large, and they will feed that egg royal jelly, which is a special food that a bee can secrete out of her head, and they will turn an egg into a new queen. Isn't that cool? Okay, next question. Go ahead. Really loud.
What do they do with the queen's body after she dies?
Oh, that's another good question. So the question is, what do they do with the queen's body after she dies? Well, if she dies outside of the hive, nothing, right? What if a bird eats her or something like that? Well, nothing. But if a queen dies inside of a hive, there are worker bees inside the colony that their job is to take out the dead bees. And if one of those dead bees is a queen, they will take out the queen as well. There's been times that I've been standing in front of my hives and just watching the entrance, and you can see one bee carrying a dead bee in her legs and flying off, and I've seen her drop the dead bee into the grass.
Are you gonna pass around
The smoker? Do you want to see the smoker? Okay. I've been asked to pass the smoker around, so. Next question. Yes, go ahead, right here. Really loud. Say again. Oh, okay. So the question was, what happens to the bees when they stay out of their hive too long during the winter? Well, the unfortunate answer is they would die. So the bees during the winter, they don't hibernate like a bear does. Bees stay alert and alive all winter long. So they do what's called clustering, where they get together with their sisters and they cluster together. They vibrate their wing muscles, which generates heat. And they keep the inside of that beehive 95 degrees all winter long. Even when it's 10 degrees outside, the inside of that beehive is 90 to 95 degrees, so they keep that brood warm. And so they stay alive, which is the whole reason why honeybees have to gather all of that honey all year long so that they can feed on it throughout the wintertime. Go ahead.
Where do bees sleep?
Bees sleep inside of their beehive. Yeah.
Yeah, but where do they sleep
In the back, sir, with the glasses. Really loud.
So when a black wasp stings you, how much they
How much what? Okay, so the question was when a black wasp or red wasp that we have here around Kentucky stings you, how long until the pain stops? I got tagged a couple years ago 3 times by red wasps when I was on my lawnmower, and I accidentally drove by one of their little paper homes, okay? And it hurt 10 times worse than a honeybee sting does, and it lasted probably 2 to 3 days of a welt.
Is that why you have a bumper?
Yeah, with the dragon shirt on. Really loud. Go ahead. Go ahead. I can't hear you. Really loud. What? Step on stingers? Do people step on bee stingers? So, like we talked about, a honeybee does not want to sting you. She does not. Because if she does, she dies. So, if you see a bee out on a flower or on a tree, she is not worried about you. She is worried about getting pollen and getting nectar, okay? The only time a bee is going to sting you is if you do accidentally try to step on her in your bare feet or something like that. She would try to sting you, right? But that's it. That's really the only time. Go ahead, the young lady here. Yep. Okay, the question was how many times have I been stung? And I've lost count. I don't know. A lot. A lot. Go ahead.
If they die when you sting them, why do they sting you?
Okay, so the question was if they die when they sting you, why would they choose to sting you? And the answer is they feel that it's critically important to get you away from their colony. They see you as a threat. They see you as a danger. They don't want you in their colony. Think of it like a black bear. A black bear loves honey, and a black bear will tear open a beehive, right? Tear open a beehive because they want that honey, and a bear doesn't care how many times it gets stung. But how much bigger is a bear than a honeybee? Like 1,000 or 10 million times bigger, right? So that's the only defense that a honeybee has is to sting. So that's why they sting. Even though they know it's going to kill them, they do it to save the colony. Young man right here, go ahead. Really loud, really loud.
It's not really a question, but I know how much time it takes for a bee to sting a bear.
Yeah.
To make it hurt. It takes 10 or 20 times.
Okay, so yes, he's making a statement that it would take a lot of stings to get a bear to go away from the colony. So in the back there, yep, you, young man, go ahead. Really loud. You went to the farmer's market where? Oh, you got my honey? Well, thank you very much. That's awesome. I hope to see you again then this summer. Go ahead, sir, right here.
So basically, when they sting them, they just sacrifice themselves.
That's exactly right. They sacrifice themselves for their family, for their colony. Go ahead. Yes.
What does a queen bee do if all of the worker bees die?
So a queen bee is going to be one of the last ones to die because the workers will sacrifice themselves for the queen. But I don't know of an instance where every other bee has died except the queen. But there is an instance where the queen dies and the worker bees remain behind, and that's where they try to raise a new queen. Yes, you right there. Go ahead. Really loud. You forgot your question? That's okay. No problem.
Raise your hand if you have a question about pollination. That's what our big project is on. So if you have a question about bees pollinating or anything like that, ask that question.
Do you have a pollination question? Okay, go ahead. Really loud. Say again. Why do they like doing pollination? So I wouldn't say their primary focus is to pollinate. We just got lucky that the ways that the bee gets food, pollen and nectar, naturally pollinates, right? So it's almost, and I know these are big words, but it's almost a byproduct of a bee going to get food. They naturally pollinate when they go get food. So we're really lucky that that happens. In the very back. Go ahead. Yep. Really loud.
The computer's about to shut down. The computer's about to shut down. It's gonna shut down.
They have homes like people, like their house.
Yes, so a bee's home is the beehive. So naturally, it's inside a tree, typically, inside a tree structure. Yeah, and then in an actual beekeeper's apiary, it's inside something like what I have here. Go ahead. That's okay. It's okay. Go ahead. Do you have a question about pollination? No? Who has a question about pollination? Yes. Say again. Ooh. Why is it important to us, or why is it important to the bees? To the bees. Well, again, it's not really important to the bees. The bees are going to get food. They're going to get nectar. They're going to get pollen. But by gathering the pollen, they are pollinating. They don't realize it, but they are. Maybe they do realize it. I don't know. They didn't tell me. But it's a natural just byproduct of what they're doing. But it's extremely important to us because so much of the food that we eat is a direct result of pollinators. And honeybees aren't the only pollinators. Bumblebees are pollinators. You guys seen butterflies? Butterflies are pollinators. They're flying around. There's other insects that are pollinators as well. But it's extremely important for our food supply because without pollinators, there would be much, much, much less food. And we as humans need that. So that's why pollination is extremely important for us. Yes? Oh, that's a good question. So the question is nectar sticky? And the answer is yes. So flowers and trees have evolved to secrete a very sweet, sticky nectar that they know will attract honeybees because flowers want to be pollinated. That's how they multiply and increase in numbers. So they have evolved to secrete this really sticky, sweet-smelling nectar that they know is going to attract the butterflies. It's going to attract the bumblebees. It's going to attract the honeybees. So yes, it's sticky, and when they deposit that in the colony with the enzymes from their honey stomach and convert it into honey, honey is very sticky. It's sugar. It's got glucose in it and other sugar substances. Go ahead.
I've seen a bee. I once seen a bee on a flower, and I knew not to step on it because I knew that bee. I didn't know if that was actually a wasp or a bee, but I knew. Stay away from
Yes,
it.
don't step. Yeah, don't step on them. That's always a good idea. I've got time for one more question on pollination. It's got to be on pollination. So who has a pollination question? In the very back. Okay, the question is, how long does it take for a honeybee to pollinate? And the answer is almost instantly. So when a bee is hopping, have you guys ever stop and watch a bee? If you see a bee on a bush or you see a bee on a tree or on a flower, just stop and watch them. And you'll see her buzz and land, and she'll try to get either some pollen or some nectar, and then she'll take off a few seconds later and land on another one. As soon as she lands on that other one, the pollination process has started. So every time she keeps bouncing around from flower to flower to flower, she is pollinating those flowers. She is pollinating those trees. So I think we're out of time. It was really awesome hanging out with you guys this afternoon. Thank you so much. You guys had excellent questions. I hope some of you will become a beekeeper one day because it's really, really, really cool. And the best part is you get all the free honey you could ever want. I mean, how awesome is that, right? Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day and weekend.